And we're back, everybody, here on Inside the Ropes. He's one of the most popular men in pro wrestling right now, Mr. Adam Cole. You see, saying baby in a Scottish accent sounds really weird, so I was trying to avoid it. But how are
I
you?
think it sounded cool. No, I'm doing great. My God, with everything going on, obviously being able to be back to work and being back in the ring consistently is awesome. So yeah, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for asking.
So, the MGF story with you is wildly successful. And this all comes out of the Blind Eliminator tournament. Now, I don't want to say that Tony Khan has booked too many tournaments, but some people might say that, right? Because there's been a lot of them. And then the Blind
Sure.
Eliminator comes up, and okay, it's another tournament. And then out of it comes this big thing. I mean, it almost felt like this was just what you needed to happen at this time. How was it for you?
Yeah, God, for me, it felt incredibly vital. Aside from the fact, again, at the end of the day, obviously we tell stories in the ring and we tell stories backstage. But being invested in general in any capacity in a very interesting and exhilarating and exciting pro wrestling storyline, I think is huge. So for me, since I had come back again, kind of dipping my toes in and getting reacclimated to being in the ring again, I really feel like this entire tournament and what we've been doing these past few weeks has been very important to me as a performer. Yeah.
And I mean, it seemed like everybody knew the direction was going to be you and MJF in a title feud at some stage, right? But obviously, the Blind Eliminator thing puts you together as partners. We get all the bromance vignettes. I mean, in terms of where the original end goal was, how did we come to the Blind Eliminator team? Because it's kind of an out of the box way of doing something that's been done a lot before, but this seemed like a really fresh twist on it.
Yeah. So I think the most exciting thing about this entire process is I think the vision and the idea of this Adam Cole MJF story, whether it be the Blind Eliminator tournament or the 30-minute draw that we had, it has changed so many different times, which I think is part of why it's been so successful and so interesting, is being able to kind of roll with the punches and adjust based on how the audience is reacting. Because I mean, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for anybody else. I was hoping that people were going to be entertained and interested in this Blind Eliminator tournament and this pairing with me and MJF. But I don't think anybody expected it to kind of take off the way that it did. So obviously, adjusting and moving accordingly based on how our audience has been responding. To me, that's what makes it really exciting. Like, to not know week by week where this is going or what we're doing is thrilling to me. Very, very thrilling. And I think that's part of why it's so thrilling for the audience as well.
And it's got to be cool for you guys that that big collision match with you and MJF against FTR did like a monster number for a Saturday night show. And it's got to kind of give you guys some, sort of pride of what we're doing is really hitting with people.
For sure. Yeah. Generally, and I've gone on record as saying this before, and I still do stand by this, with the stress and anxiety and pressure that we put on ourselves. I try not to obsess too much on the numbers, like the ratings and things like that. However, again, the proof is in the pudding in that sense. To see the response, whether it be week by week on Dynamite, with the demo being really good for segments with me and MJF, or again, like you had mentioned, that collision number with the interest in me and MJF against FTR for those tag team titles. It's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome to see how invested everyone is.
And with you, I think a lot of people kind of think of you as the in-ring worker, right? The in-ring Adam Cole is the guy that they think of. And this is, I mean, in-ring is obviously a part of it, but it's so much more than just in-ring. Did you see this kind of storyline as a challenge, or did you want to prove that you had more in you than people have maybe seen? Like, how did you approach it?
Yeah, so part of the reason, again, and I hate that I keep using the word excited, but it's true just across the board. Part of the reason that I'm so excited about this is not even necessarily, well, of course, it's always a challenge, but more of an opportunity. Because I feel like in other places, I've shown, whether it be promo work or vignettes or things like that, that I can bring a lot to the table, even as far back as my early days in Ring of Honor. So to get the chance to showcase this on such a large stage and show that, again, Adam Cole has a lot more to offer than just what he brings bell to bell has been very exciting for me, and a challenge, just to kind of show everybody what I can do. And again, character development wise, it's so exciting because our fan base pays attention to every little detail in really intricate and interesting storylines like this. So it almost feels, or it feels more so like you're involved in a television show where people are paying attention to every single little detail, which is really exciting to me because it's the same way I watch television when I'm really passionate about a show. And in pro wrestling, you can pick apart the exact same way. So yeah, it's been very exciting. It's been a challenge, but this is an opportunity I've wanted for a very, very long time. So I'm excited to be in this spot.
And, MJF tends to sort of verbally annihilate people. And, some people haven't been able to fight back with that. And it's, they kind of sink with him. I mean, when you went out and did that first battle with him, you absolutely swam with him. Talk about going out that night, going out there with someone who kind of at the drop of a hat could really stretch, your abilities, I guess.
Yeah. So that first face-to-face promo that we had, my God, that made me feel alive because of exactly what you just said. MJF on the microphone is unbelievable. Absolutely unreal. It's crazy that he's so young, too. I mean, at this point, we're past the point of saying that MJF is absolutely incredible on the microphone and tears people apart. So instead of being nervous or timid, I looked at this as an opportunity to go, okay, it's sink or swim time. I am going to bring my absolute best. I know he's going to bring his absolute best. And let's hope this goes well. Fortunately, it did. But I loved being put in that spot with so much pressure on me in that situation to go, okay, I got to bring my absolute A game on the microphone. There is absolutely no way not that I ever do, but there's no way you ever want to take it easy when you're on the microphone against MJF. So, yeah, that was a very, very exhilarating feeling to be in there with him.
And I mean, I don't know how much you can tell me this, but I have to ask the question: what is it like working with MJF? Because as an example, I have been at places where I would be technically working, and he is fully in character to me the entire time. You never really know where if he's in character, if he's out of character. How has it been working with him for a prolonged period of time?
So I will start by saying this: MJF is absolutely MJF. There is no doubt in my mind or anyone's mind. There's a lot of that character that you see is that character, or is the guy that I know and the guy that many of us know. However, I will say this: I've known MJF since he first started. I remember when he was really, really young in the wrestling industry and just getting started, and even like years ago, I think, God, it was maybe 2015 that I think I met him. And I remember seeing him then and just being absolutely blown away by the way he carried himself, his presence, his work in the ring, his work on the microphone. And that was years ago. So I knew even back then, I'm like, I'm going to share locker rooms with this guy. And he's someone that I absolutely want to have the chance to work with someday. So now to fast forward and to be in this incredibly huge angle and working with him and seeing how much he's developed and grown, it's really cool. Yeah, I am incredibly proud of what he's accomplished. I was someone who believed he was going to accomplish a lot from the very beginning. So this to me has just been, it's been awesome. It's been really, really cool.
Let's talk about the injury. You have the 4-way Forbidden Door last year with Okada, Hangman Page, and Jay White. And out of that comes the injury. Take me through the match, the moment, the realization of the injury, and what was going through your mind.
Yeah. So I had suffered a minor concussion 3 weeks prior. I believe it was AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view. And I went through every single test. The doctors made sure to check me up and down. I got scans. Everything seemed fine. It really did. And more importantly, I felt great. It was like, okay, I had 3 weeks. I got checked by multiple doctors. I passed every test going into it. Here we go, Forbidden Door, this historic night. Let's go. And I remember deep into the match, it was a simple fall. It was like, it was nothing crazy, nothing absurd. And I just remember it was like, I couldn't remember like what I was supposed to be doing at all. And normally I'm known for having a pretty good memory. So I knew something was up, and so did everybody else. And when I got the second one, that was not only the realization that something was definitely wrong, but that was when the fear started to set in of kind of what's happening to me. So obviously it was incredibly discouraging. My entire life since I was 9 years old has been consumed with pro wrestling. Again, I had been the longest amount of time I'd ever taken off prior to this double concussion injury was like a month when I got shoulder surgery. And then I was back on the road and doing stuff with Ring of Honor. So to be away from something you love so much for that long was really, really hard, especially at, at the time I was 33 years old. I'm like, I'm not even close to wanting to be finished with this. Like I have so much of my career that I want to wrestle for another 15, 20 years if I can. So, going to the doctors every week and the first few months being very discouraging with hearing from doctors like, hey, we got to take it a step at a time. But we don't know how this is going to go. And that was just the truth of the situation. So again, I've talked about this before, but between my friends and my family and Britt, most importantly, was just so unbelievably supportive through the entire thing and through the entire process, and so encouraging and made sure that I stayed as positive as possible. Because I'm someone who's known as like an annoyingly glass half full guy and like super optimistic. And this was one point in my life where I was glass half empty guy. So I was pretty discouraged. But as the time went on and I started to see progress and I started to get closer and closer to seeing improvements and being able to go back on the road, being able to get back in the ring, that's when my excitement just really shot through the roof. And again, I never lost appreciation for pro wrestling. I never have. But when you almost lose it and then you get to come back, you can't help but have a deeper appreciation for what we do for a living. So, I'm so fortunate and so thankful I got a second chance at this, and I'm not going to let it slide. I'm so happy to be back.
And I mean, I don't know if this is something that's relevant. It might not be, but obviously Bryan Danielson, it wasn't the same thing, but he's gone through issues of trying to get cleared and stuff happening. Was he able to offer you any sort of words of advice of keep pushing and keep trying?
Yeah, Bryan was very, very helpful. Christian Cage was also someone who was very, very helpful. A lot of guys had reached out, but yeah, specifically Bryan was someone who absolutely was there for me, offered me words of advice, things that I should do, maybe supplements that I should take to help, like things like that. So Bryan was very, very helpful because obviously Bryan understands more than anybody what that process is like. And so yeah, Bryan was amazing. And so were a lot of people.
The AEW roster in the last kind of 18 months has got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There's so many people. When you're out and you're kind of, like you say, you're dealing with all this stuff of you're trying to get cleared, you're trying to improve, get progress. Is there any part of you that's kind of going, oh, God, people might take my spot? Like, is there any sort of part of your mind that's thinking about your spot on the card when you're trying to come back?
I've never had the feeling of looking at someone on our roster and saying, ooh, that guy might replace me or like you said, take my spot. And I genuinely mean this. When I see friends of mine or coworkers succeed and do well, even in that situation that I was in, I was so happy for them. What I was afraid of is that the fans were going to forget about me. So just because... And again, I know so many people say it's so silly, but just because of how much content is constantly being pushed out and how people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I'm like, I've been out for a while. When I come back, are they even going to care? Are they going to be in love with all these other amazing people on our roster? Go, oh, cool, Adam Cole's back, but really, who cares? That's more what I was worried about. But again, I did briefly touch on this, but it helped me. There was a couple nights where I cried about it. It meant so much. But there were multiple nights where, believe it or not, social media was actually very beneficial to me at certain points where I would get on there and I would see every day people going, hey, hope Adam Cole's recovering okay. Hope he has a great day. And again, the classic, even if he never wrestles again, I just hope he is healthy and I hope he's all right. And that meant so much to me. So to feel like they were in my corner the entire time when I had given them zero entertainment via pro wrestling was pretty amazing.
And, you were part of the AEW All Access show as well, and that kind of covered, Brett and you going to appointments and stuff. Was there any apprehension from your point of view of, I'm going through all this stuff. Do I want to have it televised? Like, talk to me about the process of allowing that part into it.
Oh, yeah. There was a ton of apprehension. Yeah, I was very uncertain if I wanted to do it. Not only because, generally speaking, there are certain... I try to be as open and honest as I can, but there are certain aspects of my private life that I do like to keep private. So it wasn't something I was sure that I wanted to do. And then again, like you had just touched on, with the severity of the injury, it was heartbreaking for me to imagine filming this show and then at the end of it being told, yeah, you can't wrestle anymore. So I'm like, that's going to be the saddest story for me, just documented to the world. But then also, again, I kept thinking about the support that I had from everybody. And then also there was a part of me as well that was like, sitting at home, even though it was such a serious injury, I had a tendency to be like, I want to give back in some capacity, content-wise, to AEW, because AEW as a whole was so supportive and so unbelievable and so please take all the time you need the entire way through this process. And again, for months and months, I was sitting at home and doing nothing but going to brain physical therapy, which they were all on board with. But when I had the chance to kind of, again, just give some content to AEW, that was really important to me. And then on top of that, again, like I mentioned with the fans, them being so supportive through this thing, I decided one day, I remember me and Britt had talked about it late at night, and I was like, I feel like the fans deserve to kind of see what this process is, because I was very quiet, very, very quiet about what I was going through. For months, people didn't even know really what was going on. They just knew I had maybe a concussion, and that was it. So to be able to share that story with our fan base was really important to me as well. And after doing it, I'm really, really glad that I did. I'm glad that we got the chance to document that and show the journey and explain to everyone what was going on.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, we're obviously very happy you're back and thriving. Loads of other random stuff I want to ask you about. I did want to ask you about, winning the inaugural Owen Hart Cup tournament that first year. That must have meant a lot for you to do. I mean, it must have also been a bit weird that technically you were a heel, but you can't really be a heel to Martha Hart. So you've got to kind of just be like, that has to go out the window. But that just struck me as something that meant a lot to you.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, that was one of the most special nights of my career. I mean, again, so many wrestlers from my generation and multiple generations just idolize Owen Hart. Just not only for him being an unbelievable talent, but you hear across the board how much of a great guy he was. So you can't help but love, respect, and appreciate everything Owen accomplished both inside and outside the ring. So to be the winner of that first tournament, and then alongside Britt and getting to chat with Martha and things like that, it was such a special night. And I'm so glad that AEW continues to showcase and idolize the man that Owen Hart was, once again, inside and outside the ring. So yeah, very, very special night for me.
I mean, you're one of the not that many people who can say that you've had Tony Khan as your boss and you've had Triple H as your boss. Two different people. What would you say are the biggest differences, similarities of working for both of them?
I think similarity wise is they're both so passionate about pro wrestling. They both eat, sleep, and breathe this industry in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's differences in the sense of Triple H being an in-ring talent for a very, very long time, working alongside guys like Vince McMahon. So creatively, there are some differences, but it's actually unbelievable how similar the two are. Like I don't think a lot of people realize how much those two not only would agree on a lot of different things, but again, process and care about pro wrestling in the same way. So, yeah, I think Tony is a guy, again, who just loves pro wrestling with his entire heart and soul. Triple H, exact same thing. I think it'd be easier to list the similarities, actually, than the differences. Yeah.
So, something that struck me was, when you were in NXT, you worked with Pat McAfee, obviously. You guys had that amazing match at TakeOver. And, we've seen kind of since then, celebrities come in and have their first match, and it's kind of like a trend now. But, I mean, that match with Pat McAfee was so incredible. I mean, talk to me about the process of having a match with someone who's not a pro wrestler, doing it on a kind of, where a lot of people are going to see it, and sort of the pressure of that succeeding.
Yeah, that was a lot of pressure for sure. But I also took it as a massive compliment. Again, a guy like Pat who is coming from outside of our world and wanting the chance to show what he can do and maybe bring some new eyes into our product. I totally understood the process. And for me to be the guy that was trusted to be in that spot was very cool and very, very humbling in a lot of ways. But truth be told, and I hate to say this because I can't stand the guy, but Pat's unbelievable. I mean, he takes to pro wrestling like a fish to water. The guy clearly has the gift of gab. Obviously, he's an incredible athlete. And most importantly, he really does love and respect pro wrestling in a lot of ways. So even though we don't see eye to eye to this day, Pat is meant to work in pro wrestling for sure.
Did it surprise you that when you guys had that match? Because like an Adam Cole match is not like the Honky Tonk Man. No offense to the Honky Tonk Man, but it's not like a fairly simple match where you can just do the basics. It's quite intricate stuff. And it felt like he was able to hang with you on a level that I felt like it must have been quite tough to get to.
Yeah, no. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to as well, and I think you see this with a lot of celebrity matches now, is the celebrities who come from the outside and want to work a match in pro wrestling. The ones who like have watched it their whole life and really, really love it. My God, you can tell a difference because it's so true is like, obviously to be trained to be a wrestler and to actually get in there and do it, it takes years and years and years. I'm still learning and developing every single day and trying to get better. And everyone has that mentality, whether you're 1 year in or 25 years in. But again, Pat, from watching years of pro wrestling, just understood certain nuances that sometimes takes a really, really long time to understand if you're someone who has not watched pro wrestling. So I think, again, between his athletic background, his gift of gab, and again, his love and appreciation and years and years and years of watching it. Truth be told, I mean this, I knew he was going to do really well. I knew that going in. But I was so happy to see that he exceeded everyone's expectations, because I think at this point he's proven that he's darn good, especially for his experience level.
And when you were kind of leaving NXT and coming to AEW, you stayed on and finished the storyline you were doing. And not everybody does that kind of stuff. Not everybody kind of wants to, see out what they were going to do where they were. How important was that to you, and why was that important for you to, no matter what you did, make sure that you saw that out?
Yeah, that was very important to me for multiple levels. First and foremost, obviously, the love and respect that I have for Kyle O'Reilly is through the roof. I was in the middle of a program with him, and I wanted to make sure that we could finish that story. Again, I've been married to Kyle O'Reilly since 2009. I started in 2008, so there was no way that I was going to let that story be cut short or end. But secondly, and just as important, again, the love and respect I had or have for everybody at NXT, whether that be Triple H or Shawn Michaels or Matt Bloom or our entire roster, I loved it there. I had such a wonderful, wonderful experience. I learned so much. I got to explore more of who Adam Cole was. I feel like I grew a ton as a performer. There was no way that I was going to go, oh, nope, too bad, see you later. Like I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. The love and respect I still have for all of them is absolutely through the roof. And to me, it was a no-brainer.
And just off the back of that, Kyle O'Reilly, I do need to ask, people are hoping for the best for him, hoping he's going to be back. Can you give us any update on how he's doing?
All I can say is Kyle is continuing to push forward. This has been a very long and very, very tough process for him, but he's a warrior. Like, again, there's nothing that Kyle loves more than pro wrestling, and he's doing everything that he can to make sure he's getting healthy and getting back to a point where he can return to the ring. Obviously, there's still no timetable on when he's going to be able to come back. But Kyle is progressing. He's getting better every single week. And just like the rest of the world, I can't wait till Kyle O'Reilly gets back. I miss him so much.
And you mentioned Shawn Michaels there. Shawn Michaels obviously running NXT now. What were your memories of, because you worked with him a lot, what were your memories of the times that you got to share with him?
Oh my God. Well, I know I've said this so much, but just in case, if someone doesn't know, Shawn Michaels is my favorite pro wrestler of all time. He's a lot of people's favorite pro wrestlers of all time. I think there's nobody better. Babyface, heel, on the microphone, making his opponents look amazing. Shawn was the epitome of the total package who could do anything. He could be funny, serious. He made me cry. Like, he's unbelievable. So one of the things I cherished most about my time at NXT was not only having him as a mentor and someone that I learned from, but like forming a relationship with him was so surreal to me. He taught me so much. And the one thing that I always say that really, really helped me a lot was my ability to listen to the live audience and adjust accordingly changed so much. Working under Shawn Michaels and having him kind of explaining that entire process. Shawn is so smart. And again, he wants all of us to succeed, which is really, really cool. So I remember there was, I would have these takeover matches and the crowds were unbelievable. And when I would get to the back, if Shawn was excited, that feeling that I had, like in my heart and in my stomach, to see him jumping up and down and all excited and giving me a big hug was like even better than the live crowd response. So I love Shawn Michaels. He is he changed my career in a lot of ways, and he's a guy that I will always idolize, and I'm so thankful to have him as a mentor. He's the best. Shawn's the best.
So listen, I need to ask you a question because we need to set the record straight, okay? We need to set this record straight. Dave Meltzer had reported this in the past. We need to talk about the idea that WWE were potentially going to have you manage Keith Lee, cut your hair, and that was a Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard decision. That's what Dave reported. We saw Dark Order maybe, take the piss out of that a little bit on AEW. So we've seen a nod to it. What, from your perspective, is that situation?
Sure. So, again, I truly do mean this. I never heard this pitch. Not once was I told, hey, we're going to bring you up to Raw or SmackDown, and you're going to be a manager, and you're going to cut your hair and completely change your look. I never heard that. However, to be clear, I'm not saying that wasn't an idea that was pitched. I'm not saying that wasn't something that was discussed, and then that went through the grapevine. But for me personally, I was never told, Adam, if you re-sign with us, with WWE, this is what we're going to do. So again, is it true? I don't know. But I'll tell you again, I never heard that pitch. I never heard that idea.
Well, let me put one last spin on it. If you had been pitched that idea, what would the response have been from you?
I think I would have made the exact same decision that I made. I think I would have chose to go to AEW. There were multiple factors as to why I wanted to go to AEW. First of all, obviously, I'm a huge fan of the product and what AEW is bringing to the table. Secondly, the idea of getting to travel and be alongside Britt was something that was really, really important to me. At the time, we were only seeing each other maybe one day a week. And at the time, Twitch streaming, it still is, but Twitch streaming is very, very important to me. And at the time, WWE was really anti, no, you can't stream on Twitch. That's become a second passion of mine and something that I really, really care about. So aside from all those factors and the fact that again, getting to be around my friends and being a part of AEW and experiencing that. So if that was a pitch to me, I think once again I would have made the same decision that I did.
Yeah, I mean, which is totally understandable. However, I will say, even if you did have to cut your hair and become a manager, I think you would have made that work. I feel like you could make.
Oh, thank you. I would have tried my absolute best. I really would have. I've been that, and that's part of that's actually something I really love about wrestling. When you're put in challenges or situations where you're not necessarily comfortable in that role, because that's part of what makes a great pro wrestler and a great performer is being able to adapt and kind of change with what you're given. So I would have absolutely tried to the best of my ability to make that work. That's for sure.
When you debuted in AEW, obviously you debuted All Out along with Bryan Danielson, and the two of you are debuting in the same night, almost one after another. What was your reaction when that was going to be the way you were debuting? Talk me through your thoughts and just kind of reaction to all that taking place.
Oh man, I was so excited because I had seen that some people had said, for example, because me and Bryan debuted in the same night and Bryan came out shortly afterwards, that it quote unquote stepped on my surprise debut. And I don't agree at all. I feel like for the sake of the show and the pageantry and the excitement after that event, I knew that people were going to be so pumped. I was so incredibly stoked when I heard that was the idea, especially when I was backstage and I was about to go out and I heard the crowd rumbling, excited, thinking, here comes Bryan. Here he comes, because the rumors had already started and no one was talking about me, which was wonderful. So the only real fear and concern I had was that people were going to go, oh, it's Adam Cole. Where's Bryan? That was the only concern I had. But when they were excited to see me, I was like, oh my God, here we go. No one in the world is going to think, okay, Adam Cole is with AEW. He just debuted. And then a minute and a half later, oh my God, here's Bryan Danielson. It was crazy. It was nuts. The excitement from wrestling fans all over the world when that happened was so worth it. And that's the exact reason that we did it. It shows that AEW is shocking. It's surprising. You always got to stay tuned. You never know what's going to happen. That was one of the most special nights of my career. And I wouldn't have changed a thing.
And it's funny because when you were in NXT and you had that Undisputed Era theme, which was a total banger, it was like, what's he going to have when he gets to AEW? And now it's a bigger banger. Then
right,
like I don't know how they topped it, but good on them.
Mikey Ruckus is unbelievable. The All About the Boom song I have now is my favorite theme song I've ever come out to, as far as crowd interaction and the way that there's no music. It's just him yelling, it's all about the boom in the beginning for the hype portion of it. He did unbelievable. So kudos to him.
And then, when you came back this year before the MJF stuff, I think a big part that we should reference is your rivalry with Chris Jericho. And It feels like this year Jericho has been very specific in wanting to put people over and elevate people more than ever before. How was it pitched to you that you were going to work with him, and what was the process of working with him like?
Yeah, so God, as far as how, I think it was discussed pretty quickly, or leading up to me returning. So I had that first match with Daniel Garcia. And then I knew going forward after that I was going to get to finally have a program with Chris Jericho. So it was so cool, man. Again, I'm a massive fan of Chris Jericho. Getting to share the ring with him on the microphone, getting to share the ring with him bell to bell, and having a couple of matches was super fun. Again, Chris is such a smart guy. And he's someone that, again, making my decision of going to AEW, I remember thinking oh, it would be really, really cool to finally get to work with Chris Jericho. So, it was a wonderful experience. It was really, really awesome getting to work with him.
And my last question for you was going to be, Dave Meltzer's star rating system, divides opinion on the internet all the time, but you have 5-star matches and above from him. I just wondered, does the star rating thing, does it enter your head? Do you have an opinion on it? Does it affect you in any way, whether you do well or not in that? I mean, you never don't do well in that personally, but just
sure.
Generally.
So it's interesting. It's like I guess the way to put it is, if you have a match and then it's rated, let's say 5 stars from Dave, that's a really good feeling. Considering Dave has watched countless wrestling matches. And truth be told, when something does get a 5-star rating, I do believe that a lot of wrestling fans more so go out of their way to make sure that they watch it if they missed it. Just to hear that it was oh my God, this match was unbelievable and one that you absolutely want to check out. So to get a rating like that is obviously very exciting. But at the same time, like, I'm not upset if I don't get 5 stars. You know what I mean? Like, It doesn't, like, when I'm in there, pretty much the most important thing to me is how I feel my performance went, if my opponent feels okay afterwards, and if the live crowd had a great time. That's the most important thing. If the crowd's going crazy and my opponent's okay and I'm okay and everyone feels good, then I'm like, ooh, that's a win. And then if it hypothetically would get 5 stars, then it's like, oh, sweet, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, I'm not like, what? 4.5? Are you kidding me? So I did no. It pretty much, the best way to put it, it's like icing on the cake. Yeah.
I mean, because is it a big thing in terms of, and with wrestlers, do wrestlers see it as a big thing, or is it kind of like you say, like, you guys are more concentrated on your performance, how the fans feel about it, and then it's just a bonus no matter?
Sure. I think everyone's different. Like, everyone's process is different. I for example, I won't say any names, but like, there are people who will go out and have a match and the live crowd will be super into it. Their opponent's really stoked. Everyone backstage is like, oh my God, that was wonderful. But then they'll read on Twitter that it wasn't good. And then it ruins their mood, or they're like, oh, I guess it wasn't good. And then there are some people who never check social media ever. And they don't care at all what the internet thinks. So everyone's very, very different, and their creative process is different. I think like, again, for me personally, I think the best way to look at it is, of course, in a perfect world, we would love to make everyone happy. And also, everyone is very, very entitled to their opinion. Like, for example, if 2 people have a match, the live crowd has a blast, and some people online go, hey, that wasn't for me, or I hated it and I didn't like it, they're allowed to feel that way, and no one should be angry at them for feeling that way either. So I try to have a nice mix of, obviously, like I said, you want to make everyone happy, but you do realize that it is an impossible task. So I think it's important to find a nice balance of the two, where you want to make sure that the most amount of people possible enjoy what you're bringing to the table, I think.